everyone, my name is Chloe, and today I'm here to do the reread tag. So I was tagged by Berna at Berna's Bookish Adventure, so I will link her as well as the original creator down below. But this is just a tag all about rereading. So let's get into the questions. Number one, assuming you reread, where are you on the scale of almost never to all the time? So I am closer to almost never. I very rarely reread, and I've thought about rereading all the time. Like, why do we do it? If I'm not going to do it, why do I want to own physical books? And what draws me to reread? But I think about it a lot, but I don't actually do it very often. Number two, has that changed over your reading life? No, not really. I've never been a huge rereader. There are a few books that I reread a lot, and like the Babysitter's Club series, I know I started that over multiple times. But no, I've always been kind of low on the rereading scale. Number three, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book, or not until years later, or just when the mood strikes. So if I'm going to reread something, it will almost always be years later to revisit that story, or at least a year later. The only exception to that is if I'm going to read it in a different form. So with nonfiction, I really like to listen to it one time through. Hoopla has a ton of great nonfiction. Our library has a bunch of different ones on nonfiction, and so I like to listen to them one time through, and then if I really like them, I will go through the physical copy and annotate it. And so that is the only time that I will reread really closely after. Otherwise, if it's just a traditional novel, I will wait at least a year, typically. Number four, why do you reread books? So I just explained with nonfiction, I reread to then go through and annotate. It's because you can only get so much, I can only get so much on audio in nonfiction. It's I really need to see the way things are laid out and kind of make notes about different things. And if you guys don't know, I'm a former education elementary teacher, and so I really like graphs and things that are very clear and easy to see. And so I like to make those with my nonfiction, and so that's one reason to reread. The other reason I reread is just because I loved a book so much. Because I want to revisit that world, those characters, the feelings it gives me, whatever it may be. And then one final reason that I will reread is if I've read the first in a series or something, and then I'm going to finish the series. If I need to reread the first series, I really like to marathon series, so a lot of times I will reread the first or however many books I have read to then continue on with the series. Number five, how do you reread? Faster, slower, or just the best bits? And so again, that kind of depends. Novels, I think I typically read faster, whereas nonfiction, I definitely read slower because I annotate and that kind of stuff. So both. I definitely don't read just the best bits. The only book that I do that for is the Bible. Obviously, that one I kind of jump in and out of and don't read cover to cover multiple times. But every other book, I'm just too much of a completionist. I have to read it cover to cover. Number six, who or what do you reread? More specifically, what authors or genres or individual books? So I wrote all these questions out and did not think about them at all because I've answered this question too with the nonfiction, but other things that I like to reread are the Babysitter's Club books. I like those first couple when they're establishing the Babysitter's Club was so motivating and invigorating to me as a young person. I was like, yes, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do something cool like that. And so just rereading that gives me a lot of nostalgia. I also know that I read those books the most. I have the first 100 and something, but I don't even know if I've made it all the way through them. I know I've read the first few a lot, and so returning to those is good. Other ones that I really like to reread are just women's fictions or romances that I can identify with in some way, shape, or form. So if it's something that I like, I noticeably grew from or felt an emotional connection to that stuck with me for years. I really like to reread those books and get the feelings again. So typically nonfiction, middle grade, and women's fiction. If I'm going to reread, it's kind of all over the board. Is there a book you found better when you reread it? So I have read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Probably 3 or 4 times, and I don't know that it's necessarily better on reread, but it's definitely one that every time is just as good. And every time I take something new from it. And so I don't know that it's better because I rated it 5 stars the first time. And so that's one that really is just so good. And then the next one is, and one that was worse. I'm trying to think. I don't think so, but the reason is because I'm really cautious about my rereads and I don't do it very often. And for example, I've been wanting to reread the Shopaholic series because I read the first 4 or 5 or something, and now it's like 9 books. And so it's been so many years, I feel like I need to start from the beginning to kind of pick up the storyline again. But I'm really scared to do that because I don't think 31-year-old me will like it as much as I did at 21. And so if I'm worried about not liking a book as much, I don't reread it very often, but I know I have with like chick flick books like Sophie Kinsella kind of things. I just can't think of any specifically that I have read and been like, this isn't as good as I remember. But when I was in my early 20s, like any chick lit thing was like 5 stars, loved it. And now I'm a lot more critical and a lot less I don't know. I'm a lot less in love with the kind of quirky, crazy, slightly annoying main female character. And then number 9, what one book have you reread the most times? So I think it's going to be After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, because that one, if you have not read it, it is about a couple who they're just having a rough time. They're married, and I love books about married people. There's not nearly enough, but they're married and they're having a rough time. So they decide like, hey, we are going to split up for 1 year and have no contact. They do like a shared custody of their dog where at like 6 months or something they switch. But other than that, they have no contact. And so it's about them discovering like, is this marriage worth fighting for? Like, is it absence makes the heart grow fonder thing? Or is it a we're better off separately? And for me, it's like, when my marriage is good, rereading that is great because it's like you just fall back in love with love. And when my marriage is rough, it's like that's so tempting. Let's learn from them and learn from the situation. And it doesn't matter what my life situation is. I find something in that book that tugs at my heartstrings and just is so engaging to read. So I've read that a lot of times. The other one, of course, is the Bible. I have read that cover to cover once, and I try to read it at some parts at some point every day, but cover to cover only once. So maybe that doesn't count. I don't know. Probably After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So that is the reread tag. Thank you to Berna for tagging me because I had not put this on my list of tags to do, so thank you. And let me know your thoughts. Do you reread? What do you reread? Why do you reread? I want to know all the things. So I will leave the questions down below. If you want to, just answer them in the comments because I'm so curious to know. So that is it, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.